Before he was Nacho Varga in the Breaking Bad spin-off series Better Call Saul, actor Michael Mando was known for his role as the iconic villain Vaas in Far Cry 3. Now, almost a decade later, Mando is returning to the role in the Far Cry 6 Insanity DLC, which sees players take control of Vaas as they navigate and explore his twisted mind. Ahead of the DLC's release, Game On Australia got to sit down with Michael Mando to discuss his experience developing the character, as well as get a glimpse of what the future may hold for Vaas, a villain now regarded as one of the best in video game history. Gosh, it has been such a long time since Far Cry 3 came out. How does it feel getting to come back and play this character again?
It feels like we never left, in a strange way. Ubisoft came to me a few times, with ideas for the character. It never felt quite right. And this time around, what I was really interested was that was a downloadable content. So we got to kind of test it out and see how we felt about it. And to our surprise, there was so much more to the character than we ever hoped could be. And that this was just the tip of the iceberg. So it really felt like we never left. And it felt like a full circle moment, going back to something you loved, but having a deeper understanding of it and what you were trying to say the first time around.
That's really cool to hear. And like you say, it's a much deeper understanding this time. And it's a much more intimate story because you are the player character this time around. How is this experience with this DLC different to what you experienced on Far Cry 3 playing the bad guy?
It's a really interesting thing. As an actor, you never try to see things as good or bad. You try to see them as true or false. And you're always fighting for your character's point of view. That's kind of your responsibility. So I never approached Vaas as an antagonist, or any character I've ever played. This time around, it's different in the sense that we knew the first time around, the character was created through a lot of improvisation. This time around, we really sat at a table and I helped co-write and co-create and co-build sort of every single line of the character and kind of go over it. And then we wanted to keep that unpredictability that is so essential to the character. So once we were on our feet and we were doing full motion capture, which is basically like acting inside the video game, we kind of threw everything out the window and we just kind of like flew. We let it all out. And it was such an incredible team, really, and such a fun experience. I can't wait for people to see it and to see where we're going to go next with this character.
That's so exciting. And you've mentioned a couple of things there that I'd love to know a little bit more about. So like the motion capture, right? Performance capture technology has come so far since Far Cry 3. And you said, like, you just kind of threw everything out the window and just went for it once you got into the studio. Was that kind of part of that technology expanding allowed you to really sink into the moments a bit more?
That's a really good question. And I have to give a lot of credit to Ubisoft. The first time around, the technology had these cameras with these helmets with cameras. And the cameras had these really thick wires that someone had to move around as you moved. And there was a scene in Far Cry 3 where the boss has a gasoline tank. I don't know if you remember it. And he spins on himself, really fast, throwing the gasoline all around to set the room on fire. And we couldn't do it because of the wires. And to Ubisoft's credit, they sent us home. And 2 weeks later, we came back and the helmets were wireless. They had wireless cameras. So the technology is always there as a sort of, I'd like to think that obstacles in creativity push creativity forward. If you could do anything you want, you had an unlimited budget, I feel sometimes that's not a good thing. It's good when you're crunched the time. In this particular case, we only had 2 weeks to write. I had only 2 weeks to rewrite it, to shoot it, to do all the voice work. And to the credit again of the Ubisoft engineers, we wanted to capture in the voice performance something that's never been done, which is like this really intimate feeling of voice work with movement. I'm not the full motion capture thing was full acting, but then the voice stuff when you're as Vaas and he's falling and burning and getting shot and all that stuff. And usually the way you do it is you stand straight and there's a microphone there and you say everything into the mic. But we wanted to kind of push the boundaries a little bit. So we had a lav mic, we had the microphone there, and we had a boom operator. So I got to fall on the floor and I got to do all the physical work through the voice. So you hopefully could feel that three-dimensional movement, which was something they'd never done before, that we tried to think, how can we capture this in the voice performance?
That's really cool, because I was actually going to ask, how do you go from being the character that the player is looking at all the time, which was such a physical role? How do you inject that physicality into it? And to hear that is so cool.
It was, and we did want the character. I mean, so much of Vaas is seeing him and seeing his performance and his movements. Now, we only had we have one big surprise scene at the beginning and at the very end where you get to experience Vaas close and see and look into his eyes. And I'm very, very happy of that final scene. I haven't seen it yet, but I loved it when we were writing it and pitching it. And you get to see him in a three-dimensional. You can see from a 360 point of view memories of his life, and you can choose to watch them from any angle. And some of them are quite shocking and quite intimate. The difference between that acting and voice acting, to me, is really the same. I think as an actor, you're trying to go through the truth. That's, for me anyway. I mean, that's what I'm always looking for. I'm looking for what's true, what resonates with me, without any kind of. You don't want to put anything on. You don't want to make this about being good or shocking the audience or trying to be cool or whatever it is. You're looking for the truth of it, whether it's voice acting or physical acting, film, TV, or video game. It's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Something you mentioned a little bit earlier is, like, Vaas was a character that was born out of your incredible audition and was then co-developed alongside the team and yourself. And you mentioned, like, you came in, you had 2 weeks, and you really kind of fleshed out this story. Now, because it is such an intimate, much more personal story, like, how did that process work? What did that really look like in terms of you coming on board to flesh that out?
It was, both times Vaas came back into my life and I said yes to it the second time around. I was going through a lot in my personal life. And I always like to think that life and art sort of inform each other, mirror each other, and are, indispensable. You can't take one without the other. You need both to make art. You need life experience to tell a story, and you need to watch stories to better understand your life. The first time around, I was going through a breakup with a girl that I'm still very good friends with, and I was madly in love with her, and she was madly in love with me, but unfortunately, because of distance, we couldn't make it work. And there was so much heartbreak and anxiety as an actor. I didn't know where my life was going to be. I was this guy who grew up in Africa, living in Canada, not knowing how the hell am I ever going to get to a place where I can afford rent, The second time around, my career had taken on a path that I was very happy with, but my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. We were on our final season of Better Call Saul. We had just wrapped. We had one last season of Better Call Saul. And when I got the call, my father was literally, on his last weeks. I said yes to the role. And the time I got the script to the time we started shooting, my father passed away. And all that existentialism of dealing with someone you love for the first time was infused into the character. So, it was just 2 weeks where I wasn't really thinking, I was just being. And it was close to my birthday, and I had a cat follow me home. And I adopted a cat for 10 days for the whole time of the shoot. So it was me, this cat that I called Phoenix, that I named Phoenix, who has a happy home, and the memory of my father. And that was the downloadable content.
My condolences in that, but thank you so much for sharing it. And to know that has been able to be wrapped up into this performance, I'm sure is a wonderful tribute in many ways. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And I share it with love, It's like, I think that's the job of an artist. You have to be courageous. You have to look at life for what it is, and you have to tell the story that that you understand. They say write what you know. And that's what I did, Play what you know.
That's really cool. Something kind of tangential to that, like you say, life informs art, and something about Vaas and his appearances throughout Far Cry, there's a lot of movie references. And I'm curious because you mentioned, like, you grew up in Africa and you've had this quite a different background. And working on the character so intensely. Where did that kind of inspiration come from?
I think to me, Vaas is a marginalized character. It's a guy who doesn't belong to society. He's pushed aside, and he has this. He's watched society from the outside, so he's had a lot of introspection, but a lot of observation as well. And so he's very aware of this world that doesn't want anything to do with him and that he doesn't belong to. And I think as in the heart of a child, he has no shame in liking things that make him laugh. So he looks at kind of pop culture and says, "Oh, I like that. That's a great singer. This guy's funny. I don't like that movie, but this is cool. Oh, look, this guy's here in my island. I can't wait to torture him and teach him not to come invade my island, because I wouldn't go and invade his island, So he's got this kind of like I said, he's juggling a lot of really dangerous ideas, and he understands them, which makes him such a charismatic and intriguing character.
That's really cool. And I know you've mentioned in a previous interview as well, like Vaas is really this innocent child at heart that's just kind of gone too far. And you touched on it there as well. This is a much more intimate story. So how did you infuse some of those elements? Like, is that showcased more throughout this expansion?
You definitely get to see moments that you've never seen the character as. I mean, at the essence of it, it's a character who's been abused as a child, who's been abused psychologically, sexually, physically, who's seen an incredible amount of violence, who's seen people die and be ripped to pieces when he was probably like 3, 4, 5 years old. So the character has this kind of stunted psychology where he's never really left that child, but also he's been an adult since he was a child. So that dichotomy is so essential to the character, that innocence and yet that incredible wisdom at the same time, simultaneously. With this downloadable content, there's a scene, for example, where Vaas is having a totally emotional, psychological, nervous breakdown because the drugs, he just can't take it. He feels this pain in his stomach and he's absolutely addicted. And then there's the other Vaas, that is the apex predator, trying to care for the Vaas that is kind of losing his mind from the addiction. And the amount of violence between these two characters, and it's just absolutely crazy. And that dichotomy that lives in that character is so fascinating, that there are two extremes going on at the same time. And then this time around, there's another take on the definition of insanity monologue. And there were moments, I think, as we dove deeper and deeper, where it became incredibly intimate and vulnerable. And he was talking about things that were a little more profound and that were maybe kind of hinted at in the subtext of the first time around, that we understood better the second time around.
The definition of insanity monologue is like so well known and so famous. Like, that is what Vaas is so well known for. As briefly as you can, what do you hope Vaas is known for this time around?
I think this is the tip of the iceberg for me. I'm really interested in co-creating and writing a Vaas movie or a Vaas TV show, or maybe a full-on game. So that's, I think, for me, it's that kind of giving them a taste and hopefully going deeper around. And last quick thing, there's a tennis ball and in the final scene that is a call back to the tennis ball that was used in the definition of insanity monologue. I spoke to a tennis ball, and there's a reference to a tennis ball in the game. So hopefully fans will see that Easter egg.
That is really amazing. Michael Mando, thank you so much for chatting with me. Have a wonderful day.
My pleasure.